place where his had been. Arabella allowed this gesture, this small intimacy, from the man she might marry. The corners of his mouth curved into an enticing smile as she drank the wine. The heat that spread throughout her was not from the strong wine, but from the way Caelan watched as she swallowed and licked her lip where a drop yet remained. He leaned closer, as though he would dare a kiss, here, now, and she held her breath, waiting. The crashing sound of metal hitting the stone floor startled her, and she turned towards the interruption. Brodie leaned over and picked up his heavy cup and placed it back on the table. Whether done a purpose or by accident, it had ruined the moment between her and Caelan, and any hopes of rekindling it were dashed when her father spoke. "Your aunt awaits ye there, Arabella. Seek your chambers." Although she might have challenged her father, were they in their own keep, and with only her clan present, she would never do so here and now. Not with so much depending on her being an obedient, dutiful daughter, whose only task was to save their clan from continuing slaughter and destruction. Forming that hated smile back onto her features, she rose and curtsied to her father and to the Mackintosh, before walking around the table and down the steps. Her aunt, Devogula, stood there watching her every move. No doubt there would be instructions this night about her behaviour and appearance. Arabella nodded and smiled at anyone who spoke or whispered her name as she passed, and her graciousness, after so many hours of being forced to it, tired her. With a servant leading the way with a torch, she followed through the corridor and up the stairs to the chamber assigned to her for her stay here. Once there, she waited for only a moment to pass after the door closed before collapsing on the bed, allowing her face to relax from the hours of tortuous smiling. Pressing her palms against her cheeks, she knew what would come next. "You sat too close to the one and ignored the other, Arabella." Even with her eyes closed, she could tell from the changing direction of the high-pitched voice that her aunt was pacing around the edge of the bed. "You must not be seen to favour one over the other." "Aye, Aunt Devogula," she said without opening her eyes. "You were not paying attention during that last poem. You must not show disrespect to the Mackintosh's bard, or his harpist, or his—" "I understand, Aunt Devogula," she said before her aunt went on, "and my mother would be terribly shamed by my lack of manners at the feast, and by not paying enough heed to your warnings." Those words and more poured out of her, and from the silence, Arabella knew she was not the only shocked person in the room. "Child," her aunt whispered, "your mother would be proud of you. Proud that you are carrying out the duty you were born to fulfill." Her aunt's voice grew deep with emotion, and Arabella raised her head to look at her mother's youngest sister. "She would be proud that you are doing your duty when it would be easier not to, when it means you must live the rest of your life among our enemies." "Aunt Gilly," she said. The tears would not be held back now. "I am so sorry. I did not mean to act the wilful child to you. I value your advice, I truly do. I am exhausted, and will be ready to face this on the morrow." "Here now, child," her aunt said, stepping behind her. "Let me help you ready for bed." "Nay, I can call for Aileen to help me." Her younger cousin served as her companion and her maid when needed. "Hush now," her aunt said, unlacing her ties and loosening the gown and tunic she wore. Soon Arabella stood in only her shift. When her aunt began to unravel the long braid of her hair, she sighed. "Sit," her aunt directed. First, her aunt slid her fingers into the woven tresses, and then she used a brush to ease out the snarl.